We're live here on Patriots Central Radio. Draft recap special here tonight. Going to go at it solo. Matt LePan has to play dad tonight, but that's all right. We're going to go through the picks here that the Patriots made and one of their UDFA signings that I particularly like. Out of the signings, there's a bunch of them. I will get to all of them at some point, I'm sure. But for now, there's one guy at the end of the show. I'll let you know who it is that I think has got a good chance of making the team. But let's start right off the bat with the third round pick, the Patriots' first pick of the draft, Derek Rivers out of Youngstown State. He's a guy that I really like, and I think that the Patriots got themselves a good edge rusher here that can do some stuff that Patriots fans will really like to see. A guy that can really explode off the edge and get some sack numbers. He had great production in college. 41 career sacks. That's a school record. And another stat that I thought was interesting is that he didn't miss a tackle in 2016, according to Pro Football Focus. There, 58 tackles on the year, 0 missed. So a solid tackler, a guy that's good against the run and the pass. I think that in the NFL, he did a little bit of stand-up outside linebacker stuff at Youngstown State. But I really think that in the 5 technique, in a 3-point stance, is where he can really get low and explode and get out of his stance quickly. And he has an elite burst out of his stance, absolutely. And a couple of the clips that I posted on Twitter, you can see that. You can see immediately that he has elite burst and bend really around the edge. And the other thing, he's been labeled as a long guy by a lot of people. He is 6'4", but his arms are not particularly long. But I think that he uses them pretty well, and he gets his hands in the right places, and I think that is really where he'll get on the field early is a speed to power rush, and then use his hands to get underneath the tackles, shoulder pads, and go from there. I don't think that he's a guy that's really quick, and this is where I think that he's really going to have to take the next step in the NFL, and that is to add to his pass rush arsenal. You have so many guys that come into this league that are one-trick ponies in the pass rush, and that's really difficult to have a long-time NFL career on just a speed-to-power, first-step acceleration like a guy that Derek Rivers currently really has. He doesn't really have a backup plan. He doesn't have any counter moves or anything like that quite yet, and I think that that's the first step where, you look at guys that are really elite pass rushers, guys like DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, they have a counter and then they have another counter, and it's not just speed rushes, it's spin moves and swims and inside gains. But with Derek Rivers, when you watch the tape, for right now at least, it's really just he's quick out of his stance, and that's all he's really got. And there's really no other agile moves to his game quite yet. And I think that 2 things that will really change the way that he plays are, one, getting another move into his arsenal, another couple moves into his arsenal, and the second thing, to have a plan when he approaches the pass rush. You see so often with guys that really do a good job rushing the quarterback, and they study tape on these tackles, and they really have a plan when they approach things. They're ready to attack the tackle in a different multitude of ways, and they know what they're doing going in. And I think that one thing that Derek Rivers has right now is a problem with not really having much of a plan as a pass rusher, and kind of just getting off on sheer athleticism and size and length, which he does have at 6'4" a little bit, but his arms are about normal size. Before we get to the next one, I'm just going to share this on Facebook here, but I want to thank everybody that's tuning in on Facebook Live at the moment, and hopefully you can ask some questions there in the comments section, and I'll get to them at some point in the show. But I think that with Derek Rivers, we're getting a guy that's going to be pretty solid here for the Patriots, and I think that eventually he can be a Ninkovich replacement. He can play out on the edge. He can cover if you need him to the sideline and do stuff like that, cover running backs out of a backfield. I wouldn't say that you're going to have him run down the field too often, but definitely a guy that can cover the flat and play that edge position that Rob Ninkovich played. And I think that you could be looking at Ninkovich's replacement, maybe not this year, but next year when Ninkovich's contract I believe, is up. So that's what I see with Derek Rivers. I see a good player, a guy that really rushes with a lot of speed out of his burst and a lot of power, and knows how to bend around the edge too. He's a little flexible, which is nice. And also, I think that he's an underrated run defender. I think he goes up and down the line pretty well, makes a lot of tackles, doesn't miss a lot of tackles either. So Derek Rivers is a good pick for the Patriots. And then 2 picks later, they trade up for a tackle, and the first two needs that I saw when I did my pre-draft Patriots needs post on PFC was edge rusher and offensive tackle, and that's exactly where they go with their first 2 picks. So no surprise really for me that that's the route that they decided to go. But I think that with Antonio Garcia, they have a 4-year starter at left tackle at Troy. It was an air raid system, so there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve coming into a pro style system from the air raid. It's a little bit different. Antonio Garcia not quite asked to do some of the things that he'll be asked to do in New England on a regular basis, but he should be good to go there. I think from a pass blocking perspective, he's already pretty well far along, and is a very good pass protector, above average for sure already. Number 6 pass blocker in Pro Football Focus's rating system. He didn't allow a sack in 2016. It's a true stat. Only 1 QB hit allowed the entire year. So really a guy that I think has elite pass protection skills, and the really the reason why he goes in the 3rd round. You ask a guy with great athleticism, great height at 6'6", long arms, 33 inches. Why does he drop in the third round? And really, it has a lot to work on in the run game, and overall strength and girth is definitely an issue. How much of a mass does he have to move guys in the run game? Definitely could be susceptible to being bull rushed into other things like that of that nature as well. So I think that Garcia is a guy that they can bring in right away, and maybe not start right away, but he has starter traits at left tackle for sure. And really the place where I think that he's going to have to fix things up is definitely to get a little bit more size and strength. And I think that could come with NFL strength and conditioning program, and get him into the building, and get his strength up, and get him out of that. He kind of just doesn't play with a lot of mass. He doesn't play with a lot of aggressiveness or a lot of physicality in the run game, especially. So a great athlete, and a guy that can really kick out of his stance and slide and mirror pass rushers pretty easily. It's very easy for him to move, and that gives him a lot of high upside, especially at the left tackle position. I would say that in the Patriots system, especially, Nate Solder not quite asked to run block it in quite as a dominated fashion as the guys on the right side of the offensive line tend to do. So I think that they could really get away with putting Antonio Garcia with his pass protection skills already in that spot if they had to, and I think that that's a big difference between Cameron Fleming. I think is a good depth guy maybe, but I would like to see them try to move on from him and get someone that's a little bit better. I think you might see Garcia definitely could improve on the Fleming Waddle situation for them, and a guy that could really play on the left side right away, and let Marcus Cannon, if there were to be an injury to Nate Solder or a departure of Nate Solder in the next couple of years, you can let Marcus Cannon stay on the right side, and I think Garcia right away can or at least pass protect at the NFL level. So the next pick here that I thought was really interesting was Dietrich Weiss from Arkansas, the 4th round pick of the Patriots. He was a guy that had huge production in 2015, really had a good 2015 season. There's not a whole lot of tape out there on the 2015 season that I've been able to come across, but from a sacks perspective, he had 10 sacks, 43 total pressures in 2015, and then he comes in 2016 and he has a pretty off year. It was definitely lackluster. You saw a lot of issues with him in space especially, and I think that was one thing that I saw when I watched the tape with Weiss that really the Patriots could fix once he gets to New England, and that is that in Arkansas, they were having him play mostly on the edge, on the outside, and it put him in a lot of situations where he was left alone in space, and that was definitely not something that he really looked comfortable doing. He's not an elite athlete. He has really no explosion, at all from sideline to sideline or ability to cover the edge. So I think that if you watch that Auburn game that they played in 2016, you can really see it when you watch that tape. I mean, it's bad. They really exposed him with the read option, especially, and they ran right at him, and he was unable to get there. Just not enough explosion or not enough athleticism to get out of his stance and get over there to cover the edge. So that was in more of like a 4-3 defensive system, and he was playing really far outside, almost as an edge rusher with his hand off the ground for a guy that's almost 275 pounds, 6'5", big guy to be doing stuff like that. So I think that one area where he's going to really improve right away with the Patriots is that they'll play him more inside, more as a 3-4 defensive end. My guess would be, and a guy that's going to play a lot of three technique and even maybe some zero if he wants to as well. And I think that that's where he kind of gets into the Trey Flowers comparison with the two of them. I think that there's a lot of traits there with Chandler Jones as well from a body type perspective, but I just don't see that at all from a player's perspective. I think Chandler Jones is a guy that has way more explosion than Deatrick Weiss, way more athleticism, a lot more of a fast twitch player. Weiss is going to win with physicality. He's going to win with strength. He's got an elite hand height and arm length that he really uses to his advantage when he rushes. And one thing when you watch him rush is he really pops guys right out of the stance. As soon as he makes that initial contact with offensive linemen, they're moving backwards. So I think that that's a spot where you can see him succeed right away in the NFL, is playing inside, not getting into too much space and trying to get guys, from sideline to sideline, but instead playing more going forward. Really side, you can start to see him use some of that power, use some of that length to get to the quarterback, and it's a totally different game for him. All right, so the last pick the Patriots had here was another tackle, and this guy, a lot of people had him pegged as a late round tackle prospect potentially for the Patriots, mostly because of his high upside, and that's Connor McDermott from UCLA, who is an absolute monster at 6'8", 35-inch arms, just an extremely big guy. And when you watch the tape and you look and see where he is at on the line of scrimmage, almost always at that left tackle spot, he is a really big guy. One thing that really stood out was, he went up against Myles Garrett week 1 of the season in Texas A&M, and the tape was really awful. It was embarrassing to watch at times. McDermott trying to block the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and Garrett's he's a special talent. He's definitely transcendent talent, so you can't really give McDermott too much of a hard time. But it was ugly at times. Myles Garrett really had his way with him and threw him around pretty easily, and he gave up 11 pressures in that game, and he only gave up 18 for the entire year. 7 pressures allowed in the whole rest of the year, and that was, the first week of the season against Myles Garrett, the number 1 pick of the draft. So that was an ugly game for him. But once he moved on from that, he got much better, especially in pass protection. And he's a guy that, similar to Garcia, but I think Garcia is much further along in his mechanics and in the way that he uses his hands. But I think that similar to Garcia, Connor McDermott's a really athletic dude that's big and long, and is going to be able to get out of his stance and mirror pass rushers in pass protection already. The biggest issue with him really is the mechanics, and that's, I think, where the Patriots took a chance on him in the 6th round here, because I think they really believe in Dante Scarnecchia's ability to take Connor McDermott, a really big, athletic, light on his feet, can really move for his size. A guy like that, and you give him to Dante Scarnecchia, and you get some of those mechanical issues out of there. You get his head to stay up. You get his weight back. He tends to get forward with his on his toes and tends to stand up too straight, and he doesn't bend his hips too well. He's a big guy at 6'8", over 300 pounds, so it's difficult for him sometimes to get down there and bend his hips with pass rushers that are bending around the edge. If you can get him to be able a little bit more fluid in his hips and work on some of those mechanical issues of getting too forward in his stance, I think that there's some hope here for McDermott to be at least a 3rd tackle. I don't know if McDermott is ever going to play as a starting left tackle in this league, but I definitely think that he could be a 3rd tackle and eventually develop into something more down the road, just because of his raw skill and his raw athleticism. And I think that it's tough because he has serious concern issues about his overall strength as well. The two really kind of similar guys in body type, honestly, from Garcia to McDermott, in terms of, we're just not sure how much strength they actually have and how much strength they actually play with. When you put on the tape with McDermott, he's involved in the rushing game, and he'll block, and he's not shy or anything like that, but it just doesn't have much pop to it. It's not, moving guys, and he's not really making a big impact in the run game, and it's it's really a concern of his is how much overall mass and overall strength can he put on that frame and be able to handle bull rushes, be able to handle pushing guys around in the running game at the NFL level. A lot of scouts that you talk to say point blank that Connor McDermott's not strong enough to play in this league. I don't know if that's the case, but I think that there are concerns definitely there with him in the run game especially. But again, from a pass protection standpoint, he's got a lot to work on with his stance and with his footwork. But from an athletic standpoint, he's really light on his feet. He can definitely mirror pass rushers, and I think that they really have a guy here that they can work with that has high upside that potentially Dante Scarnecchia could turn into something for them down the road. All right, the last guy here, those are the guys, the four guys that the Patriots actually used a draft pick on in 2017. Fewest picks of a Belichick draft class, fewest picks of any team in the NFL in this draft as well. But one guy that they got, and I'm going to be the fan club. I'm going to be the president of the Austin Carr from Northwestern fan club going into training camp, and nobody else can claim that stake. I am here to say that I'm locking it up that Austin Carr is going to find his way on the Patriots roster, probably a practice squad player in 2017, but this guy is the real deal. He's the 2016 Big Ten Receiver of the Year. Listen to this stat line for a guy that didn't even get drafted. 90 receptions, 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. I mean, that's insane production in a big conference too. We're not talking about an FCS guy here. Northwestern, he's going up against Ohio State, Michigan, all those guys. Put up 158 receiving yards against 3 first-round DBs in Ohio State earlier this year. So this guy can really play. And the biggest knock on him really was elite athleticism and more importantly, separation at the top of routes. He doesn't have the knock on him, I think he has it, but the knock on him is that he doesn't have elite speed. He doesn't have top-end speed that's going to be able to get him out of coverage on NFL defensive backs against guys in college. He's got a really high football IQ. He understands how to get open against different coverages, and he can do stuff that other guys, you can see stuff that other guys might not be able to see as quickly. So people think that maybe he's exceeded a little bit on cadence in college and isn't a guy that has elite top end speed, but then he goes to his pro day and he runs a 4.5, middle of 4.5s, which is solid enough. Obviously it's not elite top end John Ross type speed, but it'll get you down the field. And then he runs a 6.72 3-cone, which the Patriots, they love that 3-cone drill, and that is a ridiculously good 3-cone at 6.72. Would have been one of the top in this class out of the wide receivers. I think it would have been 4th best out of the wide receivers at the NFL Combine. So that's a really good 3-cone, and when you put the tape on, you can really see how he could fit directly into the slot position for the Patriots. And I think that this is a sneaky concern or sneaky need that's going to come up on the Pats in the next couple years. It doesn't really matter, who the quarterback is. I know that's crazy to say with Brady, but no matter what, the Patriots system is going to be the same. It's been the same since Belichick came here in 2000. The offense has really evolved to catch up to the game nowadays, but it's really been the same offense really since the 2000 season, and Charlie Weiss and Belichick and those guys kind of took it together and went from there with it. And they're going to need that slot position, whether it was Troy Brown, Deion Branch, Wes Welker, Julian Edelman now, Danny Amendola a little bit. We can keep going and going on the guys, obviously, that have dominated the slot. And that's exactly where Austin Carr fits into this mix, right in the slot. And when you put on the tape, you can line him up directly in the slot, and he can beat you with big, out route, dig routes to the sideline, and he's a little heady with the way that he runs the routes as well to get open on defensive backs. He can do the big crossers. He can do the shallow crossers as well, the deep crossers over the middle out of bunch formations. He can catch screen passes. There's just a lot of things that he can do. Run quick slants that if you looked at the tape of Julian Edelman or Danny Amendola and the routes that they run, the route tree that they present in the Patriots offense, especially Danny Amendola, Austin Carr really did that at a very high level at Northwestern. And again, he's a guy that really doesn't have that elite top end speed, but in terms of the way that he moves in the open field, he's really good as a yak player as well. I posted some videos of him on Twitter breaking some tackles and running for extra yards downfield, and that's something that he could definitely do. And he has really good feel for himself in the open field and looks for good open space. I just think that from a scheme fit perspective, this is really it's tremendous with Austin Carr. He runs routes exactly the way that the Patriots want. He does things exactly the way the Patriots have wanted. He's a great guy off the field, high character guy. I'm locking it up. I think this guy is going to be on the roster. I think he'll make a practice squad spot, a la Chris Harper maybe a few years ago, wide receiver that snuck onto the practice squad. Aaron Dobson, I'm sure there's a couple of other ones as well. But Austin Carr, I really think that he's a guy that can get open against man, get open against zone. He can run out of that slot position. And when you look at the future of the slot, it is a little bit murky for the Patriots right now. Who's going to man the slot predominantly after the 2017 season? Julian Edelman will be a 2018 free agent, as will Danny Amendola. They're both getting up there in age. Edelman will be 31. Amendola will be 32. I know for a fact that Edelman is going to want more money than he got last time. He was very disappointed in the contract in the market for him. A lot of people label these Patriots guys as system players when they go and they hit the open market and in free agency, and they don't get quite the money that they were expecting because a guy like Edelman, especially, that they're worried that slot position just produces the heck out of players. But to that I say, if that's the case, then why can't Austin Carr be that guy? Edelman, a 7th-round pick, Danny Amendola, undrafted guy. Wes Welker, an undrafted guy. Troy Brown was drafted in the 8th round back when there was a bunch of rounds in the NFL draft. He was not a sought-after commodity when he was entering the league either. They turned all these guys, these UDFAs, these late-round picks into stars in the slot, and I think Austin Carr is a guy that already was a star at Northwestern last year and has a lot of talent, and I think he's going to make the team. And I think that his fit in the Patriots slot is the reason why it will be able to help. They have Brandon Cooks, they have Chris Hogan, Malcolm Mitchell, guys that can win outside. They have Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola obviously under contract for the next year, but after that, things like I said get a little bit murkier, and I think that Austin Carr could be the guy that inherits the slot position in New England at some point based off of his college film. All right, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks to everyone that listened on Facebook Live. And to those that followed along during draft season, I really appreciate everybody that was checking my stuff out on Twitter during the draft. I really enjoyed doing it the last 3 days. It's been a marathon, but glad that we were able to put up some videos, do some stuff on Twitter as the Patriots went along there. We waited a long time for a draft pick. We finally got one in the 3rd round, and then things got pretty interesting for the Pats on day 2 and day 3. So all good draft season. Matt LePan, he will be back on Thursday with me, and we'll really get into how the Patriots draft prospects and the guys that they signed to UDFA contracts as well fit into the depth chart and really get into building this roster once and for all before training camp. It's going to be a really competitive training camp. There is not a lot of roster spots to be had. The 45 game day roster is going to be next to impossible to make. The 53 roster, obviously, some of these guys in this draft class, I would think that Wise and Rivers and Garcia and McDermott are guaranteed spots. But after that, you're really going to see a bunch of rookies, a bunch of young players, and some guys on the fringe, on the bubble that are veterans, competing for roughly 8 spots, I would say, on the 53-man roster for the break of training camp, which is really not a lot, as this team really has loaded up with veteran players across the board. But that's all the time we have for tonight. We'll be back on Thursday, be back with Matt, and we'll break it down even further. But for myself and for producer Brian, thanks for doing this with me tonight. I'm Evan Lazar. We'll see you Thursday.